Macbeth is a play about time. It's a play about our relationship with the past and future. The Macbeths seem to constantly be running into the future as quickly as they possibly can, never looking back to the past. The future isn't something that happens to them, it's something that they hunt down and wrestle into submission. The very first thing that Lady Macbeth says to Macbeth in this entire play is that his letters have transported her beyond this ignorant present, and I feel now the future in the instant. And that line sums up a lot of what I want to explore today. The witches give Macbeth a prophecy in Act 1. They tell him about the future, and after that, Macbeth has a really hard time living in the now. He's constantly trying to leap over the present moment in order to bring on the future as quickly as he possibly can. "'Twere well it were done quickly," he says, as if a single act can conjure the future. And even though I keep quoting from Act 1, there is no better example of this haste than Act 2. In Act 2, time seems to speed up with a series of extremely short scenes that has Macbeth rush to fulfill the witch's prophecies. The Macbeths kill Duncan, and by doing so, they disrupt the natural order and pace of the world. They think they've found a single act that will transform them, move them from a life of servitude and into a life of control. And rather than wait for the prophecies to come true, they want, as Lady Macbeth says, the future in the instant, a single act of self-definition. But this is a tragedy, and that belief turns out to be their tragic flaw. There are no shortcuts. The natural pace of time moves slowly. It creeps at a petty pace from day to day, as Macbeth will find out by Act 5. Transcendence, the play seems to argue, takes time and cannot be accomplished in a single moment. Attempts to find a shortcut will bring about hours dreadful. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And if that sounds like it's your kind of thing, please consider subscribing. And with that out of the way, let's go through Act 2 of Macbeth play by play. Act 2 begins appropriately with Banquo and Fleance talking about the time. It's late enough that they should be asleep, and yet they aren't. Time is out of joint with their natural rhythms. Banquo is troubled by some anxiety that we can assume to be the result of his wrestling with the witch's prophecies, of his mind attempting to live in the future. He's fighting the same impulses as Macbeth, albeit with more success. One interesting comment that Banquo makes early in the scene is that heaven's candles are all out, which recalls Macbeth's earlier line asking the stars to hide their fires, "Let not light see his black and deep desires." The implication is that the stars shine a light on those dark ambitions. Banquo is concerned when there are no stars, whereas Macbeth is actually asking for that darkness. When Macbeth enters the stage, Banquo tells him that he did a great job hosting Duncan, and that Duncan, as a thank you, would like to give Lady Macbeth a giant diamond. The Macbeths are never going to process this new information together. They're never going to have a talk about how kind Duncan is and reconsider their plan. The Macbeths and the play move too quickly for that. Macbeth's response to Banquo is to say that they did the best they could as hosts without preparation. Being unprepared, our will became the servant to defect, which is a pretty good summary of what's about to happen to the Macbeths. They were unprepared to host the king and don't feel happy with the outcome. Duncan arrived too quickly. There wasn't enough time to plan. Our will became the servant to defect. They're also not prepared to become king and queen. Duncan arrived too quickly. Duncan will be murdered too quickly. There won't be enough time to plan. They're rushing to make a future they're not ready for. Being unprepared, their will becomes the servant to defect. We have seen the Macbeths talk about their plan and vaguely about what they want out of the future, but at this point in the play, it still feels like they're in the middle of a conversation. Like there needs to be more conversation. And that's exactly what Banquo wants to do in the scene. Right after Macbeth says he feels unprepared, Banquo says, out of nowhere, "I dreamt last night of the three weird sisters," in a clear bid for conversation. He wants to talk about it with somebody, though Macbeth lies and says, "I think not of them." Macbeth also says that if they get the chance, we would spend it in some words upon that business if you would grant the time. If only they had the time, they could talk about how they're feeling and what they want to do, but they will never actually get that time. Once Banquo and Fleance exit, Macbeth is left alone on stage, and we get another great soliloquy from him. Macbeth seems to be hallucinating. He imagines a floating dagger in the air in front of him, pointing him toward Duncan's bedroom. He considers that this dagger might be a dagger of the mind, a false creation proceeding from the heat-oppressed brain. Then he draws his own dagger, and the two daggers, the imagined one of his ambition and the real one he holds in his hand, fuse together. He imagines a future where he is king, which seems to require the murder of Duncan, and with these two daggers, it's clear that he cannot distinguish meaningfully between his imagined future and his material present. His mind points him towards the future while his body struggles in the present. The speech ends with him saying, "I go, and it is done. The bell invites me. Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell." Notice that these few lines start in the present tense. I go, and it is done. He has not done anything yet. Macbeth is leaping over the act of murder to imagine a future where he has already done the murder. He believes he can transcend his present state with one single act of violence. He wants a shortcut, a way to fast forward to the part where he's the king. Before this, before the play, it seems that Macbeth has lived an authentic life in service to his community, protecting his people, earning the gratitude of those around him. He's worked to achieve the reputation that he has. As he walks into Duncan's bedroom, he abandons that commitment to a slow, natural process of becoming. If it were done when it is done, then 'twere well it were done quickly. If murder will bring the future into the present, then let's get it over with. So he enters Duncan's room. This murder is going to happen offstage. Future murders will happen on stage, but this one happens offstage. For now, at least, murder is still too shameful to be performed publicly. So we move on to scene 2, where Lady Macbeth greets Macbeth after he's done the deed. Most of this play moves so quickly that it doesn't allow the Macbeths moments of hesitation or reflection on what they've done, but Act 2, Scene 2 is an exception. Here, they get a very quick moment to think about what they've done, and that quick moment is enough to show us that they need way more time to have these conversations. Even though Lady Macbeth is hyped up and excited about everything, it's very clear that both of these two know that what they've done is wrong, and that's one of the fascinating parts about this play. Many of Shakespeare's plays have this sort of moral ambiguity. This is not one of those plays. The protagonist is the villain, he knows that he's the villain, and he wrestles with the knowledge that he's a villain. It upsets him. Even Lady Macbeth, who wants them to screw their courage to the sticking place and harden themselves against any moral reservations, shows a moment of weakness early in the scene when she says, "Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I had done it." When she saw the similarities between the father of Scotland, their king, and her own father, she just couldn't do it. Deep down, even she knows that it's wrong. And Macbeth himself clearly needs some time to process what he's done. No sooner does he do the deed than he's already starting to imagine a future where the deed haunts him and he cannot sleep. He says that as he committed the murder, he thought he heard a voice cry, "Sleep no more. Macbeth does murder sleep. The innocent sleep." This new prophecy says that because Macbeth killed the innocent Duncan while Duncan slept, Macbeth has killed his own ability to sleep at night. This guy is definitely going to need therapy, but there is just no time for that. Macbeth is constantly telling us how he feels about his actions, and by doing so, he becomes a sort of suffering hero. Even though he's a murderer, he tells his wife that, "To know my deed, 'twere best not to know myself." He has a hard time reconciling his past self, the self that killed Duncan, with the present self. His identity is no longer stable in time. The single deed, done quickly, will not be enough to actually become the king. I mean, yeah, he does actually become the king in title, but he also needs to keep fighting, keep killing, in order to feel secure in that identity. At this point, he is stuck in a liminal space wherein he cannot relate to his past self and has not yet fully achieved his aspirational self. Macbeth is a total mess. He has a lot of feelings, and usually they're feelings that we can relate to. They're appropriate feelings given his actions are completely inappropriate. Lady Macbeth tries to tell him that a little water will clean the blood off their hands and clear them of this deed. But Macbeth knows that Neptune's oceans will not be enough to clean up his past actions and reconcile those actions with the man that he wants to be in the present and in the future. And that brings us to scene 3, when that ominous knocking at the door is finally answered by the porter, and time slows way down. We do not get a lot of comic relief in this play, but the porter will bring the funny and calm things down for at least a little while. And as always, comic relief is never just comic relief in Shakespeare. The porter is going to teach us how to read this play. The porter pretends to be the gatekeeper of hell, and then he pretends to answer the door for a few imaginary characters. Here's a farmer that hanged himself on the expectation of plenty. Come in time. The farmer did something he thought would bring him to heaven quickly, but instead he gets hell. Macbeth did something that he thought would fulfill his ambition, but instead he's going to keep suffering. The porter finally does open the door for Macduff and continues the comedy. He tells Macduff that drinking is lecherous, that it provokes and unprovokes. It provokes the desire, but it takes away the performance. The porter is talking about sex there, but the comment has implications for the production of the play that we're watching. Drinking is kind of like watching this play. It provokes the desire to be angry with Macbeth for killing an innocent man in his sleep, but by continuing to follow Macbeth, allowing us to see him suffer, the play takes away our ability to remain angry with him. It provokes and unprovokes. Anyway, Macduff goes to wake up the king and discovers the murder. In the grief and chaos that follow, Macbeth kills the 2 guards who everybody suspects, Lady Macbeth faints, or maybe she pretends to faint, and Duncan's 2 sons, Malcolm and Donalbain, decide to run away, knowing that it might not be safe for them to stay. This all happens very quickly. Banquo at one point tries to gather people to question this most bloody piece of work, to know it further, but this play slows down for no one. And that will take us to the final scene of Act 2. It's a short and strange scene where Ross speaks with an old man about the crazy night that they just experienced. It's certainly not as funny as the porter scene, but it also teaches us how to read this play. Ross asks the old man about an eclipse. Is it night's predominance or the day's shame that darkness does the face of earth entomb when living light should kiss it? Or, in other words, when darkness comes, is it because the night is really strong or because the day is really weak? Or to put it yet another way, does Macbeth kill Duncan because his ambition is really strong or because his virtue is really weak? The old man answers that darkness winning is unnatural, and then proceeds to list other events from the night before that were also unnatural. An owl killed a hawk. Tamed horses became wild and tried to eat each other. Stuff got crazy. It seems that when the natural order of time breaks, so does nature itself. When somebody tries to speed up time and leap over the slow process of becoming in favor of a single act of self-definition, all of nature reacts. Macduff enters the scene and explains that some people suspect Malcolm and Donalbain were involved in the planning since they fled the scene, and that Macbeth is going to be appointed king. So that's it, I guess. The title character of this play has achieved his goal, and it's only Act 2. Macbeth is king. And we're going to see how that all works out for him. He certainly imagined that being king would give him a sense of purpose and fulfillment. He wouldn't have acted so cruelly if he didn't think the reward would be worth it. The way Macbeth imagines the future impacts his behavior. He imagines what he wants, and then he acts in a way to achieve it. But at this point, he has the highest possible title. So where will that imaginative energy go now? That's going to be the focus of my next video, when I talk more about Macbeth's imagination in Act 3. Subscribe to be notified when that video is published, and thank you for watching.